Hi, it's Ben here at Glide. In this video, we are going to review the key reporting options you have within the Glide time system. And this video is specifically going to look at those reports for Glide time users that are maintaining work in progress within the system and raising bills within the system. So first of all, I'm going to click on the menu labeled with the practice name. And the third section down here is where we'll find most of the reports that I want to review today. So first one is time analysis. Now, I should point out you will by default only have access to most of these reports if you are manager or partner level. So just make sure you're appropriately logged in if you want to have a look at these. Time analysis report essentially provides a complete database of every single timesheet entry made on the Glide time system. Looking at filters across the top, you can filter by a date range, so that will be the timesheet date, the date of the timesheet entry. You can filter by an activity, so that is a particular workflow system or a particular chargeable category that isn't a workflow system. You can filter by a particular user, a particular charge rate, and you can filter by context. So this would be either a non-chargeable category or a particular client. And you can also filter by whether at this moment in time the entry remains in work in progress or if it's billed. Looking at the columns that you have within the results here, we have the date of the timesheet entry, the user, the context, so that is the client or the non-chargeable category, the activity, so activity is relevant where it's where the time is recorded to a client, and that's going to be either a particular job from a particular workflow system or a chargeable category. If the time has been recorded to a particular stage of a workflow, then that will also be shown here. Of course, when you use the time recording pop-ups on the job cards, then it will automatically default to the current stage. The rate shown is recorded here, and the number of minutes is recorded here, and description. And finally, we have cost and charge. So cost is going to be the standard value of this time entry, so the charge out rate multiplied by the number of minutes. And the charge will be the same for a chargeable entry up until the point at which it is billed or written off from work in progress, at which point it will take the actual value given to it during the billing process. If it's a non-chargeable entry, then the charge will be zero from the moment it is made. Coming down to the bottom, we can see that as with all kind of Glide tables and Glide reports, we can export to a variety of different formats. Users can change which columns they require to be visible, and you can set the number of entries that you wish to see per screen. Important to do that before you export. If you want to export everything, first of all set this to all, and you can scroll through the pages there. So that is the time analysis report. Second up, we have the timesheets report. Now, this report here is more for the kind of management of the submission of timesheets, and also provides a nice, easy way to access timesheets. So what you can do here, just to explain how the Glide system works, for every user that is active on the Glide time system, every day they will have a new timesheet created, and the time required will be set using the required number of minutes, which can be accessed by the user's profile. So if we go to my profile here, for example, and see timesheet workday, we can see the number of minutes that I need to achieve on each day of the week. So looking first at the filters, again, we can filter by a particular date range, we can filter by a particular user, and we can filter by a particular status. So timesheets are either active, submitted, or approved. It's worth noting that you can use the Glide time system in full with simply active timesheets. So the submission and approval of timesheets is a great mechanism if you, of course, wish for your team members to actually submit a timesheet, which of course confirms officially that they're happy they've recorded all the entries for that day. And approval, of course, also allows a member of the management to indicate that they have reviewed that timesheet and they're happy with it. But it's not something you have to do. So that it's the system will work perfectly well if you choose not to use that. And if you do wish to use submission or approval, it does tie in with the required minutes. So the user will have to achieve the required minutes before they can submit the timesheet. Once it's submitted, you can't make changes unless it's unsubmitted. And once it's approved, it can't be unsubmitted unless the approver unapproves it, so to say. Looking at the columns we have here, we have the date of the timesheet, the user, time required, the logged time within the system, kind of percentage representation of how much time has been logged, and the status, date submitted, date approved, and a link here for you to view the timesheet. So if we go to this day here, it will take us to the timesheet for that day. We can see at the top here that I've got 133% of my target minutes. I, as a user, have actually submitted this timesheet. So at this moment in time, either someone else could approve it or I could undo the submission. If it's approved, then I would have to, it knows who's approved that and when. That would have to be unapproved before I could unsubmit the timesheet and make any changes. These items that are in a much darker color here, they have actually been billed, so they cannot be amended. Okay, the third report to look at here is the staff productivity report. So this one is very much focused on reporting on the level of activity recorded by particular users on the system. Again, this can be filtered by a date range. So that's a range of timesheet entry dates. And the sort of information we're getting here, first of all, over on the far right, of course, you can rearrange these reports however you like, but we have the required time. So for the particular timesheet range, this is going to be looking at the workday pattern and noting how much time should be recorded. We then have the amount of time recorded. We have, and that's all time entries, both chargeable and unchargeable. We have the amount of time recorded that is chargeable, and we've got that expressed as a percentage here. The average rate recorded is looking at, as it says, the average kind of weighted average charge out rate that has been used by this employee. It's entirely possible within Glide to have more than one charge out rate for a particular user, which of course can be helpful with billing. Suppose if you've agreed a different rate for a particular member of staff when working on a particular client or on a particular service or type of work. So that's going to be reflected there. So the average rate charged, this is looking at chargeable timesheet entries. It's taking the total value charged and dividing it by the number of hours on those particular entries. So in a slightly unusual example here of James May, it's lower than the average rate recorded. That would be possible where, for example, a particular service or client has a lower charge rate, and that has had a certain amount of weighting in the chargeable timesheet entries, hence dragging down that average. And further to the right here, we have the average rate recovered. So this is the same as the average rate charged, but it's looking at the value that is achieved when this is actually billed. So if, for example, someone spent too long on a job and when you came to bill the job you had to actually reduce the value of those timesheet entries, then that would depress the average rate further. Final two columns are absolute values for the kind of timesheet date range selected, showing the total value of time recorded and the total value that's achieved with that time. So again, similar to the earlier report, we have the kind of theoretical value based on charge rates, and then we have the actual value post billing, so including any write-on or write-offs, etc. Next up, we have very much a here and now report, the work in progress analysis. So this is going to show at any moment in time the extent of work in progress that exists on any one particular client. Again, we have a few kind of filters across the top there. And what you can do on all of these figures, we provide a kind of fairly straightforward kind of aging analysis. And on any of these figures, you can click on the number to drill into the analysis of the time. From here, you can quickly export this again to the usual formats. You can add in extra extra columns or remove columns as required. And the search functionality works quite nice here. So if you just wanted to look at, for example, the ad hoc, you could type in the ad hoc. One thing to note here, this is my demo system and I've been playing around with advanced time quite a bit recently, doing some videos on advanced time, and we see a lot of scatterings of negative values here. So entirely feasible within Glide work in progress to have negative work in progress, and perhaps have a look for our video on entitled Creating and Redeeming Advanced Time. So for example, if you were to bill a client £5,000 in advance of doing any work, you can record that as advanced time, hence why you might end up with some negative values here. Okay, what's the next one up? So next we have the billing summary. So the billing summary is, as it suggests, a summary of all of the bills that have been raised on the Glide system. Again, some kind of basic kind of filters available across the top there. We have the invoice reference, we have the date, client, partner manager, bill title, net amount, gross amount, and the information relating to the over or under recovery and percentage thereof. The kind of dark orange here is indicating a credit note, whereas these entries are invoices. And what you can do here is you actually kind of click on the value here to drill into this particular invoice. The pin there indicates that the fixed bill total was used in creating this invoice. So we can click here and this will drill us in. It will show us any entries on the timesheet. It will show us the over or under calculation for every single entry. At the top here, we've got a couple of bits of advanced time being redeemed and created. So, they of course do not attract any over or under values. They are simply kind of what I would kind of call a balance sheet item, creating almost a loan from your client or paying it back essentially. So we can see at the top here the fee, the cost, the over under, and the recovery. Coming over to the right, we have here the button to raise a credit note. So you can do credit notes, in this case just a basic credit note. I think that's because I've already done the full credit note there on that particular invoice. And also my demo system here has a Xero integration switched on, but it's not active. I've let that kind of Xero system expire, hence they're not being sent across automatically. So I'm provided with a button here to try and do that manually. That's why there's a button there that says Xero. We also have a button there, Edit, which will allow us to edit some key information. And finally, the little kind of icon here allows us to view some basic information about the bill, which will, allow us to potentially copy that into a word processor if we want. The general idea with Glide is very much that we are interested in billing because, or we want to report upon the profitability of jobs, profitability of clients. The system does not aim to be a sales ledger program, so we're not kind of looking to send really nice looking bills to clients and track whether they've paid. That would be done in your accounts program. Of course, there's a wide range of really comprehensive account systems out there now, and increasingly Glide is kind of integrating with them. So Xero is the first one we have here, hence seeing the Xero buttons. Just to kind of, like I say, we have some reports that are more orientated around those subset of Glide time users that don't raise bills. So very much just take your fee information, so you can record your information about your recurring fees, and you can simply say, well, how much time we're spending on this job, on this client. So that's probably for a separate video. All I want to look at here is just to point out that if you want information in a widget format, then of course on any dashboard you can click the plus icon and you will find widgets relating to your timesheet data. And we're also starting to build up, it's only just kind of started, so it's not a kind of vast amount of information here, but this will certainly be increasing over the coming months. Information on this time and fees tab. So this is, when you're on a client card, you can get a snippet of info here for the past 30 days, 90 days, and indeed an entire year. How much time has been billed, recorded, and recovery percentage, that sort of thing. So I hope that gives a good introduction to kind of timesheet reporting, the sort of information you can get out of Glide Time. Of course, we also have our API, which I suspect will have other mechanisms for you to extract information about time. If you have any questions at all, I mean, we also have the custom report service. So of course that's our kind of bolted on reporting tool. So always possibilities to create new reports, and if you do have any queries or any requests along those lines, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the support team here at Glide. Info will pop up now as usual. Thank you very much.